just want to say before that I think, again, one of the problems for me in the way this debate has been constructed in the media is the clubbing together of so many different things. Of course, I spoke to people in the Congress to find out what was happening in the Congress. Right. So when I'm saying so-and-so says this is rubbish, I am talking about her assessment of a certain situation in the unfolding story. At a different point, I certainly string her along and say I've spoken to Azad, which I never did. And I think this could have been corroborated before Open and Outlook chose to make the assertion that I did, because it was raw material. I did refer to the fact that the Congress, in one of my reports, has asked the DMK that they've got to choose between their family and their nephew, and they can't push everybody in. So I did refer very clearly to the fact that there was this ongoing turmoil within the DMK, and ironically, and you will find that there's very little references to Raja actually in her conversations with me as they've been published. Ironically, I go on air about twice to say the Prime Minister is not keen to have either Raja or Balu. So in my coverage, and we have maintained that throughout, please judge us by our coverage. Please look to our coverage to see where this was found to influence our coverage. I mentioned at least twice that there is this stalemate because the DMK is pushing very hard. It wants all of its people.
Barkha, let's look at the tapes. Let's have a look at those tapes.
Barkha, now, just if you could begin by taking us through the chronology of the crisis, even as we get information that there will be more negotiations between the DMK and the Congress through the night. But what was the genesis of this crisis?
That's right, Vasu. According to Congress sources, the trouble basically began over two things. One, the number of portfolios that the DMK wanted, and two, the kind of portfolios that the DMK wanted. According to Congress sources, the DMK wanted 5 key ministries, including railways, IT and telecom, power, surface transport and health. Now remember, railways has been virtually promised to Mamta Banerjee, and many of these other portfolios are portfolios that the Congress is keen to retain for itself. Also, there was some initial reluctance on restoring the ministries to A. Raja and T.R. Balu, because these were two controversial ministers amid all kinds of charges and controversies during their tenure. The Congress eventually agreed to status quo, which was 3 cabinet berths for the DMK in 2004, but by that time the DMK had upped the demand to 5 cabinet berths, 4 ministers of state, that's 9 ministries in all. And in the words of a top Congress source, the DMK virtually wanted all of Mr. Karunanidhi's families, daughters, sons, nephews and colleagues like A. Raja and T.R. Balu in, which in the new mood that the Congress is in, the Rahul Gandhi doctrine of not letting allies dictate terms, the Congress says is simply unacceptable.
Right, Barkha, now speaking to some of the DMK leaders just a short while ago, one got the sense that it isn't still all over yet. While overtly they are saying that they are now sticking to the stand of outside support and that Mr. Karunanidhi leaves tomorrow morning, they still seem to suggest that if the Congress was to come back to them with a more flexible proposal, as this DMK source put it, they're willing to consider that. Also because they're aware that it's a Congress-supported DMK government in Tamil Nadu.
Absolutely. I don't think the Congress is saying it's all over yet either. We've already got a tip-off that there are going to be late-night talks. We even believe that the Prime Minister will be talking himself to Mr. Karunanidhi and possibly the Congress President as well. But I can tell you, Vasu, that according to our Congress sources, while they're very willing to keep the talks going, on the specific ministries that the DMK has asked for, I don't see the Congress bending, especially because there's a status quo formula in other news coming in that, for example, has been accepted by the NCP, where Sharad Pawar and Praful Patel are going to retain their old portfolios of agriculture and civil aviation, and the fact is that Mamta Banerjee is already gunning for railways, and that's virtually been promised to her. So I don't see the Congress really being willing to change very much more in terms of portfolios, confident in the fact that the DMK actually needs the Congress to survive in the Tamil Nadu Assembly.
It is going to take over the next couple of weeks for this to be hammered out, at least the next few days. But yes, what we are told is that the DMK is now willing to look at new portfolios. It's conceding, DMK is conceding that the initial list it sent was probably impractical. Remember that initial list had portfolios like railways and health, in addition to surface transport and power on that list. Now what we are hearing from sources on both sides is basically that for now the Prime Minister will keep those portfolios with himself. He will not allocate them till this matter is resolved between both sides, Vishnu. And the Congress at this point, according to our sources, is willing to offer chemical and fertilizers, labor and information technology and telecom to the DMK, but the Congress is firm on the fact that it is not willing to give more than 3 cabinet berths, and that DMK chief, Mr. Karunanidhi, will have to drop one of the contenders, either of his family or the 2 controversial ministers, Mr. T.R. Balu and Mr. A. Raja, who Mr. Karunanidhi has wanted to re-induct. The Prime Minister, we are told, has not been keen to bring back these 2 ministers whose performance he was not pleased with during the last tenure of the UPA. There is also one other interesting twist, Vishnu, which is that DMK sources say that Congress has been pushing hard, expressing a clear preference for Dayanidhi Maran, and this has displeased several sections of the DMK who say that the Congress is nobody to express a personal preference. So it's all a bit of a mess right now. In fact, there are also some unconfirmed reports that we may not see a large-scale swearing-in ceremony taking place later this evening. Remember, the Prime Minister, so entangled with the DMK controversy, did not even have time to call several of his other allies. We had Omar Abdullah telling NDTV that Farooq Abdullah had not even received a call, so he was set sail, as it were, for South Africa. After that report on NDTV, the Prime Minister called Farooq Abdullah, explaining that he had been totally consumed with this DMK entanglement. So there are even reports coming in now that while initial reports said that 60 plus ministers are going to be sworn in this evening, that number could be considerably smaller because the Congress has A, been so preoccupied with this DMK issue, and B, we are still waiting for final clarity on who the contender for the post of foreign minister will be.
Manu, I think go ahead with your question.
So there is something that you did not report here, and that is the very basis of this question, which is central to what the Open magazine has been trying to ask you.
Open didn't try to ask me anything. You didn't even get in touch before you published the story.
I can explain
so you haven't
that.
tried
I can explain
in either
that.
issue, by the way, to ask me anything.
I have explained that. There was a reason for that, and I believe we are right in doing that.
But I think our viewers would need to know that.
Of course, they will know everything right now. Yeah. See, now what I want to know is, you were talking to Neera Radia, who is a corporate PR, who represents 2 telecom companies, and they seem to be interested in one person becoming a telecom minister. And any journalist will know that is a very important story.
Where did you get that indication in her conversations with me? Because unlike you, I haven't had privy to all the conversations she had with everybody else. You have all those tapes, I didn't.
No, you were talking to Radia.
So I'd like you to quote a bit. I'd like you to quote a bit from these transcripts, wherein she is pushing for A. Raja, because I didn't get it.
No, you see, you are talking to a person who's trying to mediate between Congress and DMK. That is a great story. Why didn't you report that story, is what I'm asking. A corporate PR is mediating between Congress and DMK. She's very interested in someone becoming the telecom minister. Okay. Why didn't you report that story?
Okay.
I think that is a legitimate question.
Okay, I'd like to take that on. First by saying, and I haven't heard any of you talk about this, that there seems to be a constant shifting of goalposts. We have suddenly shifted the goalpost from corruption, lobbying, and all these generalizations that are bandied about, including by your magazine.
These are interpretations. These are your interpretations.
Not at all. One of the magazines had a cover saying the 2G scams, the people who ganged up to make A. Raja
Outlook's editorial position, and Outlook is not here to defend themselves. So let's just focus on
I will answer your question, but I think I'm allowed to also have a point of view.
It's your office.
Yeah. I think that's completely unfair, and you know, you do journalism where you don't contact the person you report on. We've at least brought you in. We gave you more of a courtesy than you gave us.
I think let's not Manu, Barkha, let's not make this.
Let me try and answer my question. Why don't you let me answer your question? One, have you therefore conceded first that you're not questioning me on lobbying, power broking and corruption?
In this particular case, I just wanted to answer
why just if we can get that out of the way, I will answer your question.
No,
I'm sure I'm also allowed to ask you some questions.
No, you can answer my questions and then you can ask me all the questions you want. I will answer your questions.
Okay, right, so the order doesn't matter. Go ahead, Barkha. Answer the questions asked.
In this case, what I want to know is why did you report
so I'm just pointing out the shifting goalposts, that first the allegation was corruption, lobbying, power broking. Now it's why didn't you report the story, which is a question of judgment, not of corruption.
Okay, Barkha.
Now let me answer. Now let me answer. The fact that there are corporate lobbyists who call up at the times of cabinet formation, call me a cynical political journalist. You can call me a cynical political journalist and you can question my judgment, and given what we know about her right now, even I may think, hey, that could have been interesting. But I have to say that it doesn't strike me unusual living in the political capital of India that all kinds of people who are not necessarily connected with cabinet formation call me and say, "Kaun aa raha hai, kaun ja raha hai, kya suna hai, kya nahi suna, acha mujhe yahan se ye khabar mila, mujhe wahan se ye khabar mila." I have all kinds of people telling me BJP mein ye ho raha hai, Congress mein ye ho raha hai. Many of them are quite simply people who describe themselves as public relations people, as does Neera Radia. Many of them call themselves advertising people, but they are part of the larger power firmament. I saw Neera Radia as one such person who was giving me some cover. You can say to me, why wasn't it a story for you that she was interested in who was going to be minister? Why was she so close to Kanimori?
She's representing Mukesh Ambani and the Tata.
But I didn't see that story in any other section of the media. I wasn't the only person who was in contact with Neera Radia.
Exactly.
Right?
That's a valid question.
So
why?
I'm a bit startled, Sanjay, at the shock that we all suddenly feel that, oh my God, there was a corporate lobbyist who was interested in who was coming in cabinet.
No, I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is that you are right when you say that all kinds of people call all kinds of people. Yeah. I think when the story broke out and all of these tapes were out, I think a statement that, look, as you just said, is error of judgment, which you just said yourself.
Agreed.
But that is not there in your original. What I'm saying is there was an error of judgment.
Of course it is. It's in my written statement.
I can't
it's in my written
accept
statement
that it is error of judgment. I'll tell you why. Because, come on, we are all journalists here.
Was it an error of judgment for you to not contact me before you wrote the story?
I can explain that.
Was it an error of judgment for you to print unpublished data without any follow-up?
You're not answering the question. You're not questioning the authenticity of the tapes. But before that, you have to answer this specific question.
Now, but if she's saying error of judgment, is that...
No, the error of judgment...
I'm sorry.
I cannot accept error of judgment.
Excuse me. I am not accepting an error of judgment in not doing the story.
Yes.
I would like to clarify what I define as an error of judgment.
Yes.
I believe that, looking back, I did not know that much about Neera Radia because I am essentially a political journalist. Okay? I may not have been fully abreast of all of the proxy wars that were happening in the telecom sector. My single-minded focus was on the immediate, which was a breaking news story on cabinet formation. I was desperate for khabar. I took it from whoever I did. My error of judgment looking back is that one's got to be careful about how one talks to somebody who has a special interest. I acknowledge that inadvertent, innocent error of judgment. But to confuse that with suggestions of corruption, quid pro quo and lobbying is unacceptable.
Nobody is... No. I'm not finished. I'm sorry, Swapan. I'm sorry. I have to continue with this.
Why do you think Neera Radia specifically chose you
as
a courier, as it were, between the DMK and the Congress?
Did it
suggest a special relationship of any form?
No, absolutely not. My, in fact, engagement with Neera Radia was, like many other journalists in this country, began because she was the right-hand, sort of visible route to Ratan Tata. And she had, fixed up interviews for Ratan Tata in the past a few times. That is how I knew her. You say, why did she choose me? Very interesting question. Open, of course, was much more selective in the conversations they printed. Outlook uploaded 104 tapes, of which I counted about 30 journalists, okay? In different contexts, having all kinds of conversations, and I don't speak for anybody else. I'm not sitting here to pass judgment on anybody. I speak only for myself. On gas and oil, she is speaking to a host of people. It's not like I'm some... Please do not suggest that I am this chosen person, the only journalist in the country whom Neera Radia called to speak.
No, but for the messages
I think her essential equation may have been with business journalists because of the space that she occupied. And I think that in a political formation story, she probably felt, I do not know that she didn't call anybody else. We do not have all the tapes. Please remember, we do not have all the tapes.
But she cites your name. She cites your name. I spoke to her.
Can I understand what I'm being accused of?
No, you're not being accused of anything yet. No, I have to come back to this.
No, what am I accused of? Let everyone speak on this thing.
It's very important to establish the accusation.
Right,
Barkha, I think we are diluting the central question.
All right. We just have this.
Barkha, listen. As a journalist, you naturally tend to be skeptical of whatever people tell you.
Yes.
I didn't get any sense of skepticism in the conversation that we just heard, because you played along, number one. Number two...
That's not unusual. I can corroborate. I'd like to respond to that.
No, so let me finish.
Okay, complete.
Secondly, I think you mentioned earlier that your colleagues were talking to Balu because they knew this and that and so on. That is a very different matter than talking to a PR person representing two major corporate houses because her interest is quite unlike your journalistic interest. Her interest is business driven. Your interest is journalistic driven. Now, I see a mismatch, all right, between the two.